The TypeType company was established in 2014. It has gone through a long evolution since that time. At this moment, we are approaching a new typeface design after having done significant research and in a very serious manner. None of our Russian colleagues have this experience. We believe that Neoris is an awesome product on the market. Designing Neoris, we assumed we were creating the #1 typeface in the world. Right now, we're at the production subdivision. This is our creative laboratory. This is the workshop where we design our new typefaces. And now you can witness the real creative process. This is the true magic of creation. And these are the type designers in charge of developing the looks of the fonts. Yesterday, we organized a workshop. The task for type designers was selected randomly. It was to draw a simple, airy Antica type for the chain store called Little Bird. So, the designer imagined what it had to look like. After that, we spent our entire working day drawing and designing the font.
TypeType has several fonts, such as TT Norms and TT Commons, that have been bestsellers for quite a long time, for at least several years, and, as a matter of fact, make us quite good money. But the most important thing is that we do not fully understand the reason for such bestsellers. We have some thoughts, but we have never had any clear explanation. We would like to collect some relatively objective and measurable information in this regard so that we could reproduce this success in the future, not randomly, but consciously. We would like to draw best-selling typefaces with full awareness. To begin with, we had to clearly understand what kind of font we were expected to make. In fact, that was pretty obvious that yes, we do need a sans serif type. Not an Antiqua, not slab serif, not something contrasting, nothing with a strong character. Just based on our experience and trend awareness, we realized that what we were looking for was a neutral sans serif.
Antica typefaces sell significantly less. Antica style are more of historical typefaces. They're harder to draw and they have a very specific narrow scope of use. As for decorative types, this is an ultimate fashion thing that requires a certain context. Sans serifs are like casual clothes, something like blue jeans in your wardrobe. Wear them every day, the whole world wears them, everyone needs them.
So these are safe fonts, which means that they are likely to fit the majority of projects one may think of. You can use them easily. A neutral sans serif is something you cannot use wrongly. You may only fail to give your project an additional highlight. Maybe there could be a better choice, but at least you won't ruin it.
You can see sans serif typefaces everywhere. You travel by metro, you can see that the entire metro navigation is in sans serifs. If you use any mobile apps, this is where you can see sans serifs too. As a rule, outdoor advertising is also typed in sans serifs. Sans serif types are everywhere, wherever you go.
We started research, a big one. And based on this research, market studies, and surveys of users, we attempted to outline the parameters a typeface should comply with to have a theoretical capacity to sell well. We decided to ask some questions to our users, our buyers, to find out what fonts they would like to have in their collection for casual use. What would they like to have as a neutral sans serif? We made up a quite detailed questionnaire with illustrations and various parameters for our respondents to select what they would not dare to use, what they lack in their collection of fonts, what pain they would like to share. Maybe in this broad collection of fonts there is something missing, something they would like to see there. And respectively, based on the collected answers, and there were over 100 if I remember right, we made up a table with all the parameters that people expect to find in the fonts they use. One of the answers we got from the users was, "A font should have a goal." This is a phrase that I wrote down for myself, and I didn't only think of the details of the fonts, the way they combine and how pretty they look. These are all secondary to me. This is something you can always make, but what I was trying to do is create something more than just a font. I don't know, I do believe that a person making a font actually draws him or herself. You can distinguish between fonts created by different people by some slight details.
This survey also showed us what shapes certain characters should be for a contemporary font's user, reader, or viewer to identify as an archetype by default. I mean, the shape they would identify by default. For instance, if we draw the letter A of a non-traditional shape, it might be a one-part character instead of a two-part one, and that it most likely would not be identifiable as letter A, and therefore be somewhat repellent to the users. And the frequency of such symbols might reach 10%, tentatively speaking. If we take letters A or T in Russian or English language, then 1/10 of the printed text would consist of such characters, which means that modifying the shape of one character alone, we can make a strong impact on the general visual pattern of the fonts.
One of the parameters covered by our survey was the slant angle cut. For example, I can draw the letter C, stroke ending with a straight horizontal line, or I can draw it ending with a diagonal one. Quite a lot of people answered that this option is the optimal one. Basically, this typical horizontal stroke end is a direct reference to neo-grotesque typefaces. However, lots of people also said that these options are also demanded. This is why we made an option that would be a middle one between these two. Visually, looking from a distance, these cuts seem straight. If you put them far away, or if you look at any of these variants, from a distance, it looks like a straight line. But if we look at it closer, this is an angle, which means that we succeeded in pleasing both groups. We asked people what kind of italics they would like to see in their fonts, which means if we speak about sans serifs, there may be two types of italics. Simply slanted italics, where the character shapes do not change at all, where you take the straight letter forms, slant them, and use to highlight some text parts. And there's another type, so-called true italics, where the shape of the letters may be more or less modified. If we take a look at the market, we will see that there are more simply slanted italics. But if we take a look at the users' answers, they rather incline to the true italics, to the fonts where letter shapes are changed. In our typeface, we decided to do both things. By default, our italics are simply slanted, but it is possible to switch them to true italics with a button.
This is the proficiency of the author designing the fonts that makes it look so unique. Tentatively speaking, it's impossible to draw a best-selling typeface if you're a beginner, or if this is your first year in this profession. That means that it matters to us who draws the fonts. This is something we emphasize. Because both Julia Ganina and Antonina Zulkova have enormous experience and a great design eye. Plus, the survey itself strongly prompted us to pay special attention to the contour of each character. And to my mind, as far as the contours are concerned, this font is simply flawless.
M and N are identical, though it is clear, of course, that this element, this one here, it is not identical to that of N in the size and the thickness, but visually it appears like the same element. The same can be said about other characters. All the terminals I told you about, all of them, are in this same font. And later, it comes to the development of everything, literally everything, Cyrillic letters, Latin letters, a great number of figures, auxiliary signs, punctuation marks, and they will all have the same traits, all the same. It is all designed this way for the general pattern of the fonts to look uniform.
We took a snapshot of the designers' share of the audience because primarily these are designers who use the fonts. In their questionnaire answers, they explained what they would like to be added in the fonts for such fonts to be convenient for us to use. For example, the alternative characters. For example, when we install some fonts in our system, we know that by default it is the way it is. But almost all typeface designers add some alternative characters to it. As I said previously, there might be one part letter A. In addition to the two-part A, there can be an alternative G design as well. The characters may be drawn with round dots instead of square ones, and so on and so forth. There are also such little details as various arrows and pointers, because if a designer is creating any sort of navigation, these auxiliary characters may be really needed, such as, for example, different types of digits, tabular numbers, text figures, small capitals, and so on. There are lots of little typeface details out there, and our users gave us answers to all our questions about them, which we took into account and implemented in our new font. At this moment, this is the largest letter set we have ever designed, 1,820 characters, and perhaps there can be even a little more. It will all be decided in the mastering process.
There was a very interesting insight I had concerning the neutrality of the font. I formulated it from the open answers the respondents were allowed to give. I assumed that a very neutral font is not always good, because even though it is safe and it wouldn't ruin anything, it wouldn't highlight the project. It may be a font to be used as a good daily driver, but it wouldn't contribute an individual character to the project. It was very interesting to read the answers where the people wrote that it would be nice to have a neutral font which would, for instance, have some specific symbols that catch the eye, which is a shape of the symbol that you see and understand it is unique. Let's take a comma as an example. Usually, it is a circle or a square with a little tail attached. At the end of the tail, the stroke is narrower, but here it is vice versa. Why so? Because from a distance, it doesn't matter what the symbol looks like. We can see this is a comma, it works, and it doesn't draw extra attention to itself. And we can see the originality of the comma only in a large format, even though it also works perfectly in smaller sizes without drawing any extra attention. This is all because we were still trying to create a neutral sans serif with a distinctive character, and the character manifests itself in larger sizes. What is the greatest challenge of working with sans serifs? They seem to be all the same at first, and you need to make something unique of all these little details for this font. on one hand to classify as neo-grotesque in all its characteristics, but on the other to be one and only, to be unique due to these details. This is a sort of an experiment that theoretically could produce a well-selling font, or maybe not, which naturally means that there is nothing we could guarantee, but even if the font does not sell well, it also answers a lot of questions. For example, how possible it is to predict such a thing, or is it impossible to do at all?
I think this font is sure to become popular because, first of all, it's new, fresh. We've given 2 lectures on this topic. We've demonstrated our test sketches to the public, and there were representatives of major companies who expressed their interest. Some of them were our clients. They said that was a wow type of thing. They wanted to have the font. Therefore, we think it'll be highly sought after.